Imagine you are eating breakfast with your family one morning. Your father is laughing. Your mother is pouring tea. Everything is normal. Everything is safe. Then there is a knock at the door. Two men in dark uniforms are standing outside. They don't smile. They don't explain anything. They just say your father needs to come with them. And your father, because he has no choice, picks up his coat, turns to look at you one last time, and walks out the door. That is the last time you ever see him. No phone call, no letter, no trial, no reason given. He is simply gone. And somewhere deep inside, you already know asking questions about where he went could make you disappear too. This is not a story from a movie. This is not ancient history. This is happening right now, in a country that exists on your map, in a place called North Korea. If this is the first time you're hearing about this, you need to stay with us, because what you're about to find out will change the way you see the world. And if you've heard pieces of this story before, you haven't heard it like this. Subscribe now and turn on notifications, because this is the kind of story that disappears from the internet, just like the people in it. There is a country on the eastern edge of Asia that most people will never visit. It has beautiful mountains, wide rivers, ancient temples. From a satellite, it almost looks peaceful. But look closer. Those mountains, carved out inside them, are places that don't appear on any official map. There are no signs pointing to them, no roads leading in or out that any regular person would know about. And yet, they are there. Tens of thousands of people, maybe more, are living and dying inside them right now. These places are called kwanliso, political prison camps. The North Korean government says they don't exist. They have never admitted to a single one. But here's the strange thing. We can see them. We have satellite photos of the fences, the guard towers, the tiny houses where prisoners sleep 10 to a room. Human rights organizations have been showing these images to the world for over 20 years. So the question is not whether these places exist. The question is far darker than that. The question is, what happened to the people who went in and never came out? Let's start with a woman named Hyo Gum-ya. She was 62 years old when she finally agreed to speak publicly. She had been carrying her secret for most of her life, a weight so heavy that even telling it, decades later, made her cry. In 1975, when Hyo was still a young woman, her two brothers went out on their fishing boat one morning. They were fishermen, ordinary men doing ordinary work. The sea was calm. There was nothing unusual about the day. They never came back. At first, the family thought maybe there had been an accident, a storm, engine trouble. People searched. Nobody found anything. And slowly, different, more terrifying explanation began to take shape. It is difficult to talk about my brothers, Hyo said, years later. You'd think I could forget, but every time the incident is mentioned, tears well up and my heart aches. We watched our parents suffer. Her brothers had not drowned. They had been taken. North Korea's history of making people vanish goes back further than most people realize. During the Korean War in the early 1950s, an estimated 84,000 South Koreans were taken to North Korea by force. Soldiers with lists of names, going door to door, taking teachers, doctors, government workers, anyone educated, anyone who could be useful. Most of them were never returned. At the end of the Korean War in 1953, tens of thousands of prisoners of war were held in North Korea, and only 8,343 were ever returned. The rest, an estimated 50,000 soldiers, simply vanished into the system. But the war ended, and the disappearances did not. Through the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, people kept vanishing. Fishermen pulled off their boats. Students snatched from beaches. In the 1970s, Japanese citizens began disappearing from coastal towns, ordinary people who were opportunistically grabbed by North Korean operatives lying in wait. The youngest known victim was a 13-year-old girl named Megumi Yokota. She was walking home from badminton practice on a November evening in 1977 in the Japanese city of Niigata. She disappeared from the Japanese west coast. Her parents spent the rest of their lives looking for her. Her mother, Saki Yokota, gave hundreds of interviews, spoke to world leaders, stood before the United Nations all to find out what happened to her little girl. It would take 25 years before Japan even officially acknowledged what had happened. In 2002, North Korean leader Kim Jong-il finally admitted for the first time that North Korea had kidnapped Japanese citizens. He confirmed 13 cases, 13 out of hundreds suspected, and even then, for the families of those 13, the answers they got back were not answers. They were more questions wrapped in silence. Because while the world was focused on these foreign abductions, the Japanese citizens, the South Korean fishermen, something else was happening. Something quieter, something that had been going on the whole time, right inside North Korea's own borders. The regime wasn't just taking people from other countries, it was making its own people disappear. Enforced disappearance happens frequently to North Koreans accused of political crimes, Christian missionary work, or simply attempting to flee to South Korea. One day, you are a citizen. The next day, you are gone, taken by the secret police, transferred to a location your family will never be told about, held in a place that officially does not exist. Families are often not notified of their relatives' detention. Authorities refuse to disclose the reasons for the detention or the fate of the person taken. And here is the part that makes it truly terrifying. If you ask too many questions about where your family member went, you become a suspect. Family members searching for a disappeared person can be at risk of intimidation, reprisals, and disappearances themselves due to their association with the disappeared person. So families learn very quickly. Don't ask, don't search, don't speak, just grieve in silence and pretend everything is fine. A 2023 United Nations report based on detailed interviews with 80 victims and their relatives laid out exactly what this silence looks like from the inside. One woman described what it was like after her husband was taken. The most difficult part is that I have heard no news about my husband. I would like to hear words from him. It would have been so nice if I at least knew whether he is starving or having proper meals. Just hearing some news would be comforting, but I've heard nothing at all. Think about that for a moment. She does not want money. She does not want revenge. She just wants to know if the person she loves is eating enough food. That is all she has left to hope for. And the North Korean government gives her nothing. If this story matters to you, drop a comment below. Tell us, did you know this was still happening today? Your comment helps this video reach more people who need to hear it. Sometimes, the crime is watching a foreign TV show. Sometimes it is owning a Bible. Sometimes it is listening to South Korean music on a smuggled phone. Defectors reported that the purpose of executions and imprisonments included drug dealing, watching and disseminating South Korean videos, and attempted escape. But sometimes, and this is where the logic of this system becomes almost impossible to understand sometimes, there is no crime at all. People are sent to political prison camps without charge, without even a trial, many of them simply for knowing someone who has fallen out of favor with the regime. There is a rule in North Korea called guilt by association. It works like this: if your grandfather was considered an enemy of the state, you can be punished for it. If your uncle tried to escape to China, you can be sent to a camp. If your father said something critical about the leader, maybe even in a private conversation, maybe even decades ago, you, your mother, your children, can all be arrested. It is a system of collective punishment that results in the incarceration of several generations of one family, often for life. Entire family trees erased, not because of anything they did, but because of who they were related to. One man, interviewed for the UN report, put it this way: I heard my wife and son were sent separately to different political prison camps. My son, who was a minor, should have finished his prison term of 4 years, but I still have no idea about his whereabouts. That suggests either he is still in a political prison camp or died in detention. Father, guessing whether his child is alive or dead. Unable to know, unable to find out. This is not a story from the 1940s. This testimony was given in 2023. And once someone is inside these camps, what happens to them? Survivors who manage to escape and make it to South Korea or other countries have spent years trying to answer that question. Their testimonies, collected by human rights organizations and the United Nations, paint a picture that is hard to read and even harder to forget. From virtually all former prisoners' testimonies, There has been an extraordinarily high rate of deaths in detention measured by the deaths of family members or those in work units. The total number of people believed to be inside these camps right now today, as you watch this, is estimated between 150,000 and 200,000, based on accounts from North Korean state security officials who themselves defected. 150,000 to 200,000 people in camps that officially do not exist, living lives that the world was never supposed to know about. But some of them found ways to leave messages behind. Some of them, before they vanished completely, managed to say something, to pass a word, a whisper, a last breath of truth to someone who would one day carry it out into the world. These are their final words, and we are only just beginning to hear them. You know how people disappear. But here is the question that haunts every researcher, every human rights lawyer, every family member who has spent their life waiting by a door that never opens again. What happens inside? What do people say? What do they think? What do they feel in the moments before they are gone forever? Because some of them did speak, not loudly, not safely, but they found ways to leave traces, whispers that survived, words that made it out even when the people who said them did not. And those words tell a story that the North Korean government has spent decades trying to erase. Let's start with a woman named Kim Young-soon. She had a good life once. She was educated. She had friends. One of those friends happened to become the secret girlfriend of the future North Korean leader, Kim Jong-il. She didn't know that was dangerous. How could she? She was just a young woman who knew a girl from school. In 1970, Kim Young-soon was taken to Yodok political prison camp along with 7 members of her family simply to prevent her from ever telling anyone about Kim Jong-il's private life. She had committed no crime. She had done nothing wrong. She had only been in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong person. She would spend the next 19 years in that camp. When she finally testified before the United States Congress, she described prisoners being woken at 3:30 in the morning and forced to work until sundown, with the whole group punished if work goals were missed. But it was what she said about her family that silenced the room. From our original family of 8 people, she said, currently only 2 have survived and successfully escaped from North Korea. The rest of my family, 6 people, have all died. 6 people, gone. Because she once knew someone famous. And then she said something that has stayed with everyone who heard it. Something simple, something that carried the weight of a lifetime. I have lived a life of tears, of blood and hardship, she said. Please save the 23 million people in North Korea who are living a life of misery not unlike what I suffered. That was her final word to the world. Not anger, not revenge. Just a plea. Please save them. But what about the people who never made it out at all? What happened to their words? An inmate known only as Kim who survived Camp 15 at Yodok described what he saw. Everyone in Kwanlaso witnessed executions. When I was an inmate in Kwanlaso 15, I saw 3 executions. Those executed included inmates who were caught escaping. One of the people Kim witnessed being executed was a 24-year-old woman named Dong Chol-mi. She was executed in 1999. Her crime was her religious beliefs. 24 years old, no trial, no appeal, no last letter to her family, no grave they were ever told about, just gone. And yet, somehow, even in the silence, people found ways to speak, because in telling stories like these to the world, something unexpected happened. Some survivors, under the enormous pressure of fame, interviews, publishers, and advocacy groups began to mix up details, or leave things out, or sometimes add things in. And the North Korean government, which almost never responds to anything, was watching. When a man named Shin Dong-hyuk became the world's most famous survivor of a North Korean prison camp, his story reached millions. His biography became a New York Times bestseller. His testimony played a role in a United Nations report condemning North Korea. He was called the world's single strongest voice on what happens inside these camps. And then, in 2015, something shocking happened. Shin admitted that parts of his story were not true. He had changed key details, including which camp he had been in, and his age during certain events. The world reacted with confusion. Was any of it real? But here's the part that gets lost in the noise, and this is important. Trauma experts and human rights investigators immediately pointed out that memory loss and confusion over details is not unusual in cases of severe trauma. "Can you remember where you were when you were 12 years old? At your birthday party?" said Brad Adams of Human Rights Watch. "I can't." And there was something else. Shin said something that revealed why he had hidden parts of his story for so long. He had not lied to deceive. He had hidden the truth to protect himself from something unbearable. "The most important reason why I could not reveal all of the truth," he said, "was because of my family." He had watched his own mother and brother be executed, and for years he could not bring himself to explain why, because the answer was that he himself as a young boy in a system designed to make prisoners betray each other had been the one who reported them. He had not lied to make himself look good. He had lied to hide the thing he could barely live with. "Instead of me," he wrote, before stepping away from the public eye, "you all can still fight. The world still needs to know of the horrendous and unspeakable horrors that are taking place." That was his final word. Not a confession, a handoff. "You keep going, even if I can't." If this story moved you, share it with one person today. Not for views, for the people still inside those camps who have no voice. Subscribe if you haven't, and we'll keep telling the stories that the world tries to forget. According to witnesses interviewed by Amnesty International, when prisoners were brought before an execution, a prosecutor would ask them if they had anything to say. In most cases, prisoners would plead guilty and ask for a second chance. The judge would then respond that it was not a matter of forgiving an individual, it was a crime against the state, and therefore the person had to die. In one documented case, the prisoner was asked if he had a last word. He said he did not. Think about that. Silence. What does a person choose not to say when they know those are the last words they will ever speak? Maybe they had already said everything that mattered. Maybe they had no words left. Or maybe, and this is perhaps the most haunting possibility, they knew that anything they said would be used against the family members they left behind. Even in death, they were protecting someone. There is a man named Kang Cole Hwan. He was 7 years old when guards came for his family. His grandfather, a Korean Japanese man who had given his fortune to North Korea when the family repatriated, had somehow fallen out of favor. No specific reason was ever given. In 1977, Kang was sent to Yodok prison camp along with his family for 10 years. He spent his childhood there. He grew up watching executions. At 15, his education stopped and he was assigned to exhausting and dangerous work. Details. Eventually, after his release, he managed to escape North Korea entirely. He wrote a book. He met world leaders. He became a journalist. But here's the part that never gets easier to hear. After Kang defected, the North Korean government sent his sister and her 11-year-old son back to Yodok camp as punishment for what he had done. He has not been in contact with his family since. A man who survived a decade in a prison camp, who built a new life, who told the world what happened. And the price he paid for speaking was that his sister and his young nephew were taken to the very place he escaped from. His final words about them are not words. They are silence. The silence of someone who knows that saying their names out loud might only make things worse. It is not just built to punish people. It is built to make the punishment contagious. To make every person who escapes, or speaks out, or simply survives carry the guilt of what happens to the people they left behind. The silence is the weapon. And the final words of North Korea's vanishing prisoners are, so often, not dramatic speeches. They are not the kind of last words you see in movies. They are quiet. They are careful. They are the words of people who, even at the very end, are trying to protect someone else. A former camp survivor, testifying before the U.S. Congress, described North Korea in the 21st century as a place where the lives of political prisoners are more easily disposed of than those of animals. A country, she said, where the whole country is a prison. And then she said something that rings like a bell long after you've heard it. Please end the existence of such a society. Make it into a place where humans can live as people. That is a final word. Not from someone facing execution. From someone who survived and carried the weight of everyone who didn't. Right now, as you watch this, between 150,000 and 200,000 people are estimated to be inside North Korea's political prison camps. They do not know you exist. They cannot send messages. They cannot make videos. They cannot vote or protest or knock on a door. But a few of them, through extraordinary courage, or extraordinary luck, or both, found ways to let their words out. Through survivors who memorized what they saw, through guards who defected and told what they had done, through family members who carried descriptions of loved ones across frozen rivers and barbed wire borders, all the way to courtrooms and unchambers and congressional hearings and documentary films. One organization, NK Watch, founded by survivors of the camps themselves, has submitted over 768 petitions on behalf of victims to the United Nations Working Group on Enforced and Involuntary Disappearances. Each petition is a name, a face, a life that was taken without explanation. When one grandmother submitted a petition asking about the fate of her family fighting stomach cancer, and desperate for answers, the North Korean government's official response was chilling in its simplicity. The person mentioned in the petition, they said, did not exist. The person did not exist. That is what a government says when it has made someone disappear so completely that it can erase even the record of their existence. But we are here, and we remember them. The fisherman taken at sea. The 13-year-old girl who walked home from badminton practice and never arrived. The woman who spent 19 years in a camp for knowing the wrong person. The man who cannot speak his sister's name without knowing it might cost her something. The father who guesses every day whether his son is alive or dead. The prisoner who, when asked for his last words, said nothing, and in that, nothing said everything. Their silence is not emptiness.